Everybody has the same questions after TCU's lost to Arizona State, and I have the answers. Oh yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast. Your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South. 817 Raised in today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We'll wrap up with PFF grades. Josh Hoover's disappointing end does not define his entire day, especially if you let the PFF grades tell it. But Kaleb Elarms-Orr was the player of the game, and PFF knows it. But there is one surprising part of his grading metric. But I wouldn't leave you on a cliffhanger. I'm not going to leave you hanging. We're going to get straight to it because I know you're asking the same question that everybody else is asking when it comes to TCU. What's next? What's next for TCU? They were hot. They were on a 3-game winning streak. They knocked off North Carolina. Really put an end to the Bill Belichick hype out there at Chapel Hill. You have Abilene Christian. That's a trap game. You're able to avoid it. You didn't love how you performed, but you're good. You play in the final Iron Skillet. You beat SMU. Now you have Arizona State. Now you open up the Big 12 slate and you lose in a really close yet devastating fashion. Somebody in a Twitter comment called it heartbreaking. And I think that there's a lot of people who probably felt that way, called it heartbreaking. But in addition to being a heartbreaking loss, this loss to Arizona State was a devastating and partially crippling loss. Not all the way, because there is still a way to get out of it. But when the question is posed, what is next for TCU? The only answer has to be perfection. Because if it's not perfection, it's over. I said that Josh Hoover's Heisman hype was over. That's an individual level. I think it's too much of an uphill battle for him to try to climb. But as far as TCU as a team, it's not over for them. They can still make it to the college football playoffs. They can still make it to the Big 12 championship. I actually think there's still a route for them to make it to the college football playoffs without winning the Big 12 championship. Wouldn't say it's necessarily a strong path, but I think there is a path to it happening. But it all revolves around perfection. TCU, after losing to Arizona State, though I don't think it's a bad loss, cannot afford another loss. I don't care if it's a close loss. I don't care if it's a blowout. It cannot happen. If TCU loses another game, Josh Hoover's Heisman hype is already done. The TCU college football playoff hopes will be done as well. You need perfection as you go through the Big 12 slate. So let's look at it from a college football playoff perspective, and then we'll look at it from a Big 12 perspective. Because either way, the answer is the same. You have to win out. The thing about the college football playoffs is I really do think that a one-loss Big 12 team can get it. And we have to look at this Arizona State game for what it is. This Arizona State game is a tough matchup for TCU on the road. This is a hostile environment. If you get them right? Like you can silence that crowd, but if you get them right and they're invested in the game, this can be a tough one. But one thing that works against TCU is it's not just the loss. We watched how the loss happened. And I do think that is hurtful. So when I say that the door is open for a at-large bid to the playoffs, I mean, it's open. It's not wide open, though. It's open, but it ain't, oh, yeah, they can easily make it if they just win out no matter what. I don't have that confidence. If TCU wants to win out and get an at-large bid, not win the Big 12, but get an at-large bid to the CFB playoffs, then they're going to have to win in dominating fashion against teams like Iowa State and BYU and Baylor. These are the games that are going to be pivotal moving forward. You have to win all the games no matter what. But if you want an at-large bid, I think you're going to have to win with some style points. Style points aren't required for the Big 12 championship, though. If you can win out, there is a chance you get in. What really kills TCU is the fact that I think there could be 2, maybe 3 Big 12 teams with one loss, but Arizona State's one of them. And if you lose 2 games, I don't know how many teams are going to get into a tiebreaker with 2 losses, but Arizona State will probably be one of them. If you lose another game, it's probably to an Iowa State or a BYU. Those teams could be one of them. So now you're losing a tiebreaker in a 1-loss to Arizona State. You're losing a tiebreaker in a 2-loss to an Arizona State and partially a BYU or an Iowa State or a Baylor, just assuming you lose to a team that is also a contender. That's going to be a problem. Moving forward, you can't afford to lose those games because you're so far past. Like, you're so far back in the 8 ball or behind the 8 ball. You are. You already are. And it's really tough. What's difficult is I feel like TCU has put up some really good things early in the season, but then they lost to Arizona State. And now you don't have the time to say we put up some good things. You don't have time to say, okay, we'll bounce back. No, if you would have lost to SMU, you could bounce back because that was not counting against you in the conference. But this is a conference loss. And it's a conference loss against a team that's a competitor who may not lose another game in conference play. They may lose one more game, but regardless, you need them to lose 2. You need Arizona State to fall short 2 times so that you don't have to face them in a tiebreaker where they have the head-to-head against you. That's difficult to me. That's a difficult pill to swallow. So the CFB playoffs on the line, you got it. You can still creep in. The Big 12, you can still get in. And I think that a 1-loss team could miss the Big 12 championship. When I look at this, you got Texas Tech, you got Iowa State, you got Utah still there, you got BYU there. UH looks solid at times, though I thought that game against Oregon was way too close. I do like the Cougar quarterback, though. There's some talent in this conference. Baylor is still going to make noise. I don't think that we should just completely rule them out. But I don't think I hit on this enough, so let me touch back real quick. When I say that the thing that hurts TCU is not only did you lose, we saw the loss. So TCU's loss is going to hurt because you lost to an unranked Arizona State, while a value SMU was a valued opponent when they were unranked. So I don't think the Arizona State's loss is going to look, or the Arizona State loss is going to look like a bad loss. I don't think it's going to, but it's also not like you lost to a top 10 team. And you may be competing with someone who lost to a top 10, top 15 team for that final at-large bid. That's going to come into play. I don't say that to disrespect Arizona State. I'm just saying if you're going against an an SEC team, if you're going against an SEC team that lost a top 15 matchup and that's their loss compared to you losing to unranked Arizona State, that's not going to be good on your head-to-head resume. It just isn't. So these are things that come into play. And not only that, we saw you build up a 17-point lead and then you fell short. You built up a 17-0 lead and then they walked you down on a game where everybody was watching. It's not as if you were buried in 11 or 2:30 because there were some phenomenal games this weekend. I'm so happy that TCU played on Friday so that I could watch all these games on Saturday. I'm just going to be honest with you. Call me selfish if you want to. I had a blast watching LSU Ole Miss, watching Oregon versus Penn State, watching Georgia versus Bama. What's the Big 12 matchup I tried to catch? I tried to catch the beginning of Arizona versus Iowa State. Didn't turn out to be that good of a matchup. Illinois versus USC. There were some games. Shout out to my HBCUs. Alabama State versus FAMU was a game that I was watching. There was a really fun amount of games on this weekend. Jackson State versus Southern as well. But I was very happy. So I was able to be selfish and just dig in and watch. That was like a football buffet and everybody had something to eat. Phenomenal weekend. Lived up to the hype as well. Anyway, we've looked at the Big 12 ramifications on this. Oh, sorry. I'm all over the place. I started thinking about the buffet. But basically, just to summarize it for things I maybe didn't say because I don't feel like I said it all. The thing that hurts TCU is that everybody was watching their game. Everybody saw TCU get up to a 17-point lead. Everybody saw you get walked down. Everybody saw those last 2 possessions where Josh Hoover had an interception and a fumble. Everybody saw these things. And it's not as if that was against a top 15 team. And I fear for TCU's sake that you may be going against a team for an at-large bid that has a better loss on their resume than you have to Arizona State. So this is a very risky loss. This is a good team that you lost to, but it's a very risky loss nonetheless. Now, as you look at towards the Big 12, they don't have to play Texas Tech. No, they don't. But they do still have to play some really talented teams. They still have to see Baylor. They still have to see Iowa State, they still have to see BYU. I like Houston. I would be interested to see how that game goes. I think that UH is, I don't know, they're kind of weird to me, but shout out to my guy Parker, host of Locked On Cougs, nonetheless. Kansas State has Avery Johnson. They haven't looked too great, but still, you have some teams that have some talent, have some things that could scare you a little bit. This is not going to be easy sledding. TCU has to be perfect, but they have a lot of games that could trip them up. So this will be something interesting to watch. You wish you would have got this. This could have been a statement win on the road in a nighttime game on a blackout day. Instead, you ended up getting your lights turned out at the end. Is what it is. It's just where you have to be now, and you have to be perfect. So let's move forward and look at the PFF grades, because one guy who wasn't perfect, right? He wasn't perfect, but he was pretty stinking good, was Kaleb Elarms-Orr. Unfortunately, it feel like his performance is just going to fly by the wayside. So let's give it one last toast before we get out of here and we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, and Sundays are the type of days that I need 5 Hour Energy, because obviously I try to do this show on Sunday night, sometimes end up getting pushed into Monday morning, but I have the Saints game, and then I have the Saints squad show that I'm recording for an hour after the game, and then I try to come in here and do some sort of work, so if I don't record that night, I can record first thing in the morning, and you know what? The mouth of the South does get tired. That 5 Hour Energy, however, helps me push through any time that I need an extra little boost. And what I love the most is how portable it is. So it doesn't matter if I'm like, man, I'm getting tired, I'm on the way to Walmart. I can take a shot on the way to Walmart of 5 Hour Energy. Please remember that, a shot of 5 Hour Energy. And enough of that boring stuff. Enough of the boring, flavorless caffeine. Nuh-uh. It's time to give it caffeine flavor. Upgrade it with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get your favorite you love, or be bold and try something new in store or online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Big 12 or maybe Locked On Buffs if you want to get an early head start on studying your enemy. Revenge game is coming up soon. We're going to these PFF scores, and we're going to start off with the defense before we get into an up and down day by Josh Hoover, because I think his grading actually represents how up and down that he was. But let's focus on some of the ups in segment 3. Right now, Kaleb Elarms-Orr had the highest high of anybody. He led the entire team with an 80.7 PFF grade. He was easily the top guy. Well, actually not easily. There was somebody who was close, but he didn't play nearly as many snaps. Kaleb Elarms-Orr was the star of the day, and it actually disappoints me as someone who loves defense. I love defense. I know that people want to see 50-point games. Not me. I want to see people run around and get rocked. I want to see people come across the middle, see a linebacker, and get smacked without targeting. I hate some of the targeting calls. But if we can get legal cracks, whoo, that's my type of football. And Kaleb Elarms-Orr, though you didn't see a lot of coming across the middle, what you did see was a blitzing linebacker who was impacting the game in 3 different ways. He was impacting the game as a run defender. He was impacting the game as a guy coming off of the edge to take down Sam Levitt twice. And he was impacting the game as somebody who, when he wasn't getting after Sam Levitt, he knocked down a pass in the 4th quarter on 4th down, a pivotal moment. And if TCU would have won, I genuinely believe not only would Kaleb Elarms-Orr have been the player of the day, I think that he would have made the play of the day with that pass breakup that I talked about, because that was a game that I tweeted out. If this is a victory for the Frogs, this is going to be a play we look back on and look at how pivotal it was. I thought that was an amazing play by Kaleb Elarms-Orr, but he was the linebacker who really set off everything. I thought that there was a lot of physicality on this team or in this game, almost to a degree that doesn't get represented. I will talk about that tomorrow. We have a stacked episode. I actually think I know at least 2, if not 3, all 3 topics that we'll be talking about tomorrow. I want to make sure we lay that out, because this is an underrated aspect of the game. But physicality was there, and I thought Kaleb Elarms-Orr was one of the guys who did it the best. I was kind of surprised by his pass rush grade, though, because as much praise as I'm heaping upon him, he didn't have a great pass rush score. He was actually below the 70s. The only thing he did that was below the 70s. And He had 2 sacks on the day, both on stunts where he came around around the tackle while the defensive end slanted down, and it was good. It was a good rush. It was the only time that I feel like they really got to Sam Levitt and brought him down seamlessly. Other times you would get to him, it'd be difficult to bring him down. If they brought him down at all, they did bring him down outside of that, but it was rarely easy. And a lot of times he was elusive, and those plays stood out. The only plays that matched how notable that Sam Levitt's scrambles were was a Kaleb Elarms-Orr sack 1 and 2. I thought that those were big-time plays that stood out as the highlights of his day. That pass breakup, another highlight of his day. When a player has 13 tackles, which is what Kaleb Elarms-Orr had. When a player has 13 tackles and you don't mention that until, well, we've been talking about him for about 3-4 minutes at this point. When we're that deep into the conversation about a linebacker before we talk about his total tackles, that tells you how impactful he was all around as a pass rusher, as a person in coverage, as a person who just showed up in pivotal moments. To me, an impact player is someone who makes the play when you need them to make the play. That is Elarms-Orr, and he has continued this little streak that he's been on where he brought down and had a big-time sack of Kevin Jennings just last week. You're seeing an emergence, and I wish that TCU would have won the game simply for the fact that Kaleb Elarms-Orr could have got the proper love that he deserved. That defense in general had a really good day. One guy on this list who I normally would not have named because he only played 14 snaps is Max Carroll. But I think that in his 14 snaps, the things that he was able to showcase campaign for more playing time. They campaigned for him to be more than a 14 to 17 snap guy. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and slide over and let's see how many games or how many plays that you see him play on a normal basis. Let's see, because I don't know how many snaps it was, and I probably should have looked at this before. Max Carroll played 14 snaps this week. The week before, he played 9 snaps. Against Abilene Christian in North Carolina, he played 25 and 36, but those are blowouts. When you're looking at the close games, you're looking at 9 snaps versus SMU. He did make one play, though. It was followed up by a boneheaded celebration. You did see him make a play. Against Arizona State, he only had 14 plays. You see him make another play. What I'll say is, typically I would not have included Max Carroll in my PFF grades because he didn't play 20 or more plays. But his 14 plays, he made an impact. He was an 80.3 on defense, but also he made plays in the in the trenches. You see him against SMU. He made plays out in space. These are with less than 15 points a game, less than 15 plays a game. This ain't basketball. With less than 15 plays in each of the last 2 games, you saw Max Carroll make an impact. You can take out that celebration and the taunting, but against SMU, he made a play in space. Against Arizona State, he made a play in the trenches. I thought he was really good, and he had credited with 3 stops. He played 14 plays. Max Carroll played 14 plays, had 3 tackles, and a tackle and a half for a loss. That's an impact player. That is a player who is campaigning to get more snaps. Max Carroll is really good. And if I gave you too many stats, just focus on the last one. 14 snaps for Max Carroll, 3 tackles on the day. He's credited for 3 stops, which means these are offensive plays that ended in failure, and he has 1.5 tackles for a loss. This is a player who I think deserves more time, next to Kaleb Elarms-Orr. And then last person you have from a positive is Jonathan Bax, who I just thought he did a good job setting the edge. I'm not going to go too deep into him because we're already using a lot of time, and I want to make sure we get to the offense. But he had a play in coverage where, like, this is the thing about PFF. You must understand that it just means you're the closest person in coverage, because Jonathan Bax allowed one catch. Jonathan Bax allowed 1 catch for -1 yards, and he had 2 yards in yak on that play, which basically means he caught the ball 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, ran up, and that was it. Come on, he probably wasn't even covered. That was probably a swing pass. You know what I mean? Lastly, the 2 guys who struggled were Jason McIver, who his coverage was meh, but the run grade was terrible. He missed half of his tackles, allowed catches on both of his targets. So that's where things really come into play. Where you're like, you got to be a little bit better there. 1 tackle for Zach Chapman in his return. So that's probably why he scored so low. He didn't see a lot of impact plays. But at the same time, I do wonder how much the return from injury was still limiting him. I do wonder that. We'll see next week when he probably has a better more of his legs underneath him coming back from that injury. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt today. We'll watch it next week. Now, let's get into the interesting Josh Hoover debate, because he had some highs, but he had some lows. And when you have both of those things, you kind of end up with what PFF gave him. So let's take a look at that as we continue and close out today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that helps you make a huge difference as a business owner is Quo. You might know them as Open Phone, but not anymore. FKA. That's Quo, FKA Open Phone, formerly known as. It's the same great business phone system that you heard me talk about before, just has a new name. That's it. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. Me, I don't believe in that. I'm trying to get every single dollar I can. And listen, if you've ever been a customer, which I'm sure you have somewhere, and you called and they didn't answer, you weren't calling back. So why, as a business owner, would you want to take that chance with your business? Please get Quo, and make sure that you are taking advantage of their built-in AI agent, which is an absolute game changer that can answer after-hours calls. So you want to do everything you can to make sure that you get every customer. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. No missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel is the best thing that I know for enjoying games. Now, I don't necessarily like to put money down on games that I'm emotionally invested in. But when it comes to games like the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, I'm all in for that. I like Aaron Glenn. That's my guy. Can he get his first win? We're looking at the Bengals. Can they get a win without Joe Burrow? These are questions that you're going to want to ask. And if you know the answers, make some money on the answers. Why not? And if you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 bet. Doesn't matter what it is, put down a $5 bet. If it wins, you get $300 back in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com. I don't care if you're new. I don't care if you've been there before. Make a little bit of extra money. It's football season. There's so many games. Basketball's on the way. Make you some money today. Simple. And if you're new, take advantage of those $300 that you get back in bonus bets. Go to FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com, and make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Let me know what you think about PFF grades coming in on Monday. I'm on the fence. Honestly, as I'm doing them, I feel like doing them on Tuesday is a little bit better. I just think that I think Monday for every single take that we can get out is a little bit better. But let me know what you think, because I'll do it the way, because I'm not all the way sold. But if you guys feel any way like, oh, yeah, we like the PFF grades on Monday while it's fresh, I'll do that. I'll probably try next week as well, but we're going from a Saturday to a Monday instead of going from a Friday to a Sunday or Friday to a Monday. But let's get it. Josh Hoover leads the team 72.8. Joseph Manjack comes in 71.7. And then Chase Curtis comes in 68.2. We're going to Manjack. I'm sorry. Manjack and Curtis, I thought y'all did good jobs. I thought y'all had really impressive games. And Curtis, I thought he did a good job as a blocker. He had what I thought was Josh Hoover's best throw on what was a fake screen, and he ended up peeling out downfield. It was a 21-yard gain. Joseph Manjack, I thought he showed himself to be reliable on a day where Jordan Dwyer just didn't live up to the hype that I gave him on Friday morning when it came to Friday night. So you needed someone who's going to stand up. That was Manjack. Forgive me for pushing through number 2 and number 3, because number 1 is what it's all about. It is. It's the main event of the evening. And if I didn't have the question of what's next, I probably would have put this in number 1. I thought Josh Hoover had a really good first half, and he had a really bad second half, and he had really highs and really lows. There was a point where I tweeted out Josh Hoover is ridiculous, because I thought he was. At that moment, he was. But then the game went on and he did not continue to play ridiculously. I actually thought some of the mistakes he made was ridiculous. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about whether or not the beginning of Josh Hoover's season was fool's gold in one category. In one category, we're going to talk about that. Not in general. I think he's still a good quarterback. I think he's still a fantastic quarterback. But there's one part of his game that we thought he left in 2024. We thought he left it in 2024, but I'm questioning whether or not he did. I'll be interested to see how that response goes. I hope that people are having a nuanced conversation around it. But let's have a nuanced conversation around his PFF grade, a 72.8, which is not that bad. It really isn't. The one thing that I think helps him is that he had 7 big-time throws. That's crazy. 7 big-time throws by PFF is an extremely high amount. And with all of the focus being on that late interception was terrible. That late fumble, which I thought was terrible. I thought that he wasn't helped a lot, but I don't think that he helped the situation. And unfortunately, people don't ever want to talk about it. Like that's a take that's looked at as slander a lot of times, where we just want to blame one person or put all the blame on everybody else instead of one person. I don't want to do that. I think that everybody on that TCU offense really contributed to slowing down themselves, to be honest. There was times when Hoover put the ball right on Dwyer and Dwyer dropped it and went to an interception. There's times when I thought that the right tackle, for example, on that fumble, I thought he got pushed back, but at the same time, I thought Hoover should have been more poised. I thought he would have had better pocket awareness. Wasn't his blind side. I feel like I've seen him have better pocket awareness and definitely not leave the ball all hanging out. But these are the bad plays. But he also had 7 big-time throws, including the one that I said to Chase Curtis. I thought he had some really nice throws early in the game. There's a reason that TCU was up 17-0. The problem is when it got down to the wire, Josh Hoover did not live up to that. When it came down to the wire, Josh Hoover, he folded. The Hoover Dam cracked. And that does not define his entire game, or maybe it will. Maybe it will define his entire game. Honestly, that's just, I lied. What Hoover did in those last 2 minutes will define his entire game for everybody, but that's not how it works for PFF. They grade the entirety of the game. The 2 critical mistakes in clutch, I don't think that they weigh more than 2 plays in the first quarter. I don't think PFF grades that way. We grade that way. The eye test grades that way. The non-metric way grades that way. I don't think PFF does. But I think that 72.8 shows you how good he was in the beginning when he was putting dots all over the field, and how bad he was, where in the fourth quarter, TCU couldn't get but 1 first down in 15 minutes. A little bit of back and forth, but I did think that it paints the whole picture. As for the lowest people on there, you have Quentin Harris, who's a 49.8 coming in for the injured Ryan Hughes. He wasn't playing that well anyway. Neither one of them really played that well, but Hughes did have a better grade than Harris. Eric McAllister only played 13 snaps. One of the most irritating things in the broadcast was hearing about how Eric McAllister got shut down, and it's as if nobody was relaying the information that he was dealing with an injury and was barely playing. Like, they came in after halftime and was like, yeah, he's injured. He's probably not going to play. Well, when he's on the field, he was getting blanketed. He only played 13 snaps. I don't think that he played nearly enough, and they weren't all passing snaps. It wasn't nearly enough to talk about being blanketed, but the announcers did not notice that. So, whatever. Trent Battle was the second lowest player on this list, where he had a horrendous pass block grade. Ironically, the only thing he actually did do good per PFF was run block, and he's a running back. So, just not a good day for the running attack at all. I don't know if we're going to talk about that tomorrow, if we're going to talk about that on Thursday. I think Wednesday already have something a little bit planned, but we'll see. Sometime between Tuesday and Thursday, we'll talk about how Sonny Dykes mentioned he was abandoning the run, and not because they were behind. Oh, that tells you that's the biggest indictment of the run game that I've heard. It is. So I think we'll probably talk about that either Wednesday or Thursday. But in the meantime, in between time, tomorrow we'll be talking about Josh Hoover and whether or not the first 3 games were fool's gold. Was it fool's gold from what we saw from Hoover? I don't know. Time will tell. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.